My wife cheated for 6 months. She thought I'd forgive her. She had no idea what was coming. For 10 years, Daniel Carter believed he had it all. A beautiful wife, 2 wonderful children, and a thriving career in real estate development. His wife, Emily, was his best friend, his partner, the mother of his children. Every morning he woke up feeling like the luckiest man alive. But in a single moment, that illusion shattered. It was a Friday evening, and they were driving home from their favorite Italian restaurant, the place where they had their first date. Emily sat beside him, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her green eyes sparkling under the city lights. She reached over, squeezing his hand, flashing the warm, familiar smile that had captivated him for over a decade. Then her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Daniel barely noticed at first. Emily was a marketing executive. Late-night messages from clients weren't unusual. But when her phone connected to the car's Bluetooth, everything changed. A voice message played through the speakers before she could stop it. God, Jake, last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I swear, you know exactly how to make me feel things I haven't felt in years. I don't know how I'm going to keep my hands off you when I see you at work tomorrow. Silence. The world seemed to slow to a crawl. Daniel's fingers clenched around the steering wheel, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. Emily's face turned ghostly white. She fumbled for her phone, frantically disconnecting it from the car's system, but the damage was already done. Daniel pulled the car over at his breathing rate. The air inside the vehicle felt suffocating. Emily. His voice was eerily calm. Who the hell is Jake? She blinked rapidly, opening her mouth, then closing it again. No excuses. No explanations. And that silence told him everything. The car was silent except for the distant hum of passing traffic. Emily clutched the hem of her dress, her fingers twisting the fabric as if trying to ground herself. Daniel exhaled slowly, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. Don't lie to me. His voice was low, dangerously steady. Don't insult me by pretending this isn't what it clearly is. Emily's lips trembled. Daniel, it's not. How long? He cut her off, his tone sharp enough to slice through the tension in the air. She hesitated, her breath quick and uneven. A tear slipped down her cheek. 6 months, she whispered. Daniel felt something inside him snap. 6 months. Half a year of lies. While he had been waking up beside her, kissing her good night, making her coffee, she had been in another man's arms. A humorless chuckle escaped him. 6 months, he repeated. The words tasted bitter on his tongue. Wow. Emily reached for his hand, but he yanked it away as if her touch burned. Daniel, I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, I swear. His head turned sharply, his dark eyes narrowing. Are you seriously telling me you love me? After a 6-month affair? Her sobs deepened. It was a mistake. Daniel let out a dark laugh. A mistake? You accidentally ended up in his bed. You accidentally kept seeing him for 6 months. Emily recoiled as if he had slapped her. I got caught up in it. I didn't know how to stop. You didn't want to stop. His voice was void of emotion now. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Daniel took a slow breath, his mind already shifting. He had 2 choices. Break down, let the pain consume him, and allow Emily to spin the story, painting him as the neglectful husband, while she played the remorseful wife. Stay silent. Let her think she got away with it. Pretend. And he wasn't the kind of man to crumble. No. He was going to destroy her. And she would never see it coming. The drive home was silent. Emily sat beside him, her body tense, her fingers gripping the hem of her dress like a lifeline. She had no idea that he wasn't thinking anymore. He was calculating. When they pulled into the driveway, Daniel stared at their house, the home he had built for her, for their family. It had once been a place of safety, of love. Now it felt like a prison, its walls closing in on him. Taking a deep breath, he turned off the engine and stepped out of the car. He didn't wait for Emily. He walked to the front door and unlocked it, aware of her hesitant footsteps behind him. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Their 2 daughters were spending the weekend at his parents' house, giving him time to think, to strategize. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and leaned against the kitchen counter, studying his wife, really studying her. For 10 years, he had adored this woman. For 10 years, he had believed she was his soulmate. Now all he saw was a stranger. Emily hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands. "Say something," she whispered. Daniel took a slow sip of his whiskey. "Who is he?" Emily flinched. "Daniel, please. Don't lie to me again, Emily." Her lips parted, her hands shaking. "His name is Jake Miller. My boss." Daniel had suspected it, but hearing it made it real. "How did it start?" he asked. She swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was just harmless flirting at first. And then one night after work, we had drinks. One thing led to another, and her voice broke. "I don't know how it got this far." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You knew exactly how it happened. You let it happen." Emily's face crumpled. "No, it wasn't about you. It wasn't about us. He made me feel wanted." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Wanted? And I didn't? The man who kissed you every morning? Who left notes in your lunch? Who held you at night?" She sobbed, but he felt nothing. He drained the rest of his whiskey and set the glass down. "Go to bed, Emily." She hesitated. "I love you, Daniel. I do." He turned away. "I don't believe you." And with that, he walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, broken and afraid. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. Emily thought she had a chance. She had no idea. At sunrise, he made his first move. He hired a private investigator. Carlos Martinez was a former detective, a man who specialized in uncovering secrets. When Daniel sent him a message, attaching everything he had, Emily's voice recording, suspicious credit card transactions, work schedules, Carlos responded within minutes. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll get you everything you need." Good. That gave Daniel time to prepare. Emily came downstairs later, wrapped in a robe, her hair messy from sleep. She hesitated in the doorway, watching him carefully. "Morning," she said softly. Daniel looked up from his coffee. "Morning." Her eyes searched his face, expecting anger, hatred. Instead, he gave her nothing. "Are we okay?" she asked hesitantly. Daniel took a slow sip of coffee, then set the cup down. "We will be." She smiled, relieved. And for a brief second, he almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But she had destroyed him first. And now it was her turn. Daniel sat in his car outside the cafe where he was supposed to meet Carlos Martinez. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the steering wheel as he replayed the last conversation with Emily in his head. She really thought she could fix this. She really thought he would just forgive and move on. As if 6 months of betrayal could be erased with whispered apologies. Daniel exhaled sharply, pushing those thoughts away. Emotions had no place in what he was about to do. He needed facts. Cold, hard evidence. At exactly 9:00 a.m., a man slid into the passenger seat beside him. Carlos Martinez. A former cop, now private investigator, Carlos had the look of a man who had seen too much. His dark eyes were sharp, calculating, and his demeanor was calm but authoritative. He smelled of coffee and cigarette smoke. "Daniel," he said with a nod, "I went through what you sent me. You were right. Your wife's been screwing around." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I need proof." Carlos pulled out a folder from his bag and handed it over. Receipts, emails, text messages. I cloned her work phone. She deleted most of the messages, but some things leave a trail. Daniel opened the folder. Inside were screenshots of chat logs, Emily and Jake Miller, late-night messages, hotel bookings, dinner reservations, even a flight itinerary for a work trip that had been just the two of them. His stomach twisted, but he forced himself to stay composed. Is that everything? He asked. Carlos hesitated. There's something else. Daniel looked up sharply. What? Carlos pulled out another set of photos. These were taken the night before, the night Emily had confessed. Jake Miller wasn't home with his wife and kids. He had been at a bar drinking with another woman. Your wife wasn't the only one, Carlos said. Your boy Jake? He's been cheating on her too. Daniel stared at the photos. Jake Miller with a blonde kissing her, holding her hand, acting like a man with no commitments. A cold smile formed on Daniel's lips. Perfect. That night, Daniel played his role flawlessly. He kissed Emily on the forehead. He held her hand. He even made her favorite dinner, watching as she nervously picked at her food, wondering why he wasn't screaming, why he wasn't raging. He was calm. Too calm. And that terrified her. Daniel, I need you to talk to me, she finally said, setting her fork down. He took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim of his glass. We'll talk, he assured her. But not tonight. Her shoulders sagged in relief. Good. Let her think she was safe. Because tomorrow, everything would fall apart. Daniel made the first move the next morning. He sent an anonymous email to Jake Miller's wife, attaching the photos of his affair with Emily. Then he printed out copies of every piece of evidence Carlos had given him and delivered them, personally, to Jake's office, right to his boss. The fallout was immediate. By lunchtime, Emily was calling him frantically, but Daniel ignored every call. Instead, he walked into her office just as security was escorting Jake Miller out. Jake's face was pale, his expression twisted in shock and anger. Daniel just smiled. Actions have consequences, Jake. Jake lunged at him, but security held him back. Daniel didn't flinch. Hope it was worth it. And with that, he turned and walked away. Emily ran after him, her face wet with tears. Daniel, what did you do? He finally looked at her. I told the truth. She shook her head. You've ruined everything. He let out a cold laugh. No, Emily, you did. And then he walked away, leaving her standing there, watching as her world burned. Emily tried calling Daniel over and over again, but he never picked up. He had already said everything he needed to say. There was no fixing this, no going back. Instead, he spent the next few days in complete silence, letting the consequences of Emily's actions unfold. Jake Miller lost his job. His wife filed for divorce. His reputation was shattered. Emily, on the other hand, was still employed for now. But the whispers in the office were growing louder. People knew. And that was worse than any official punishment. Daniel watched from a distance, but he felt no satisfaction. Only emptiness. One evening, Emily finally showed up at the house. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair unkempt. She had been crying. Daniel let her in without a word. She stood in the hallway, gripping her purse tightly, as if afraid he'd throw her out. I don't know what to say, she whispered. I can't take it back, but... Then don't say anything. She flinched at his cold tone. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Emily, we both know this marriage is over. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want it to be. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me. A sob escaped her lips. Daniel, I love you. For the first time in days, he laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. You love me, he repeated. Emily, love isn't just words. It's actions. And your actions told me everything I needed to know. She took a step toward him. Please don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to therapy, we can. No, Emily. He pulled a folder from the table and handed it to her. Divorce papers. Her hands trembled as she took them. Daniel. He looked at her, and for the first time he felt nothing. No anger. No pain. Just clarity. Goodbye, Emily. And with that, he walked upstairs, leaving her alone in the silence. The divorce was finalized in record time. Daniel made sure of it. He didn't want revenge anymore. He just wanted peace. He moved out of the house they had shared, into a new apartment downtown. A fresh start. Emily tried reaching out a few times, but he ignored her. She was his past now. One evening, Carlos Martinez met him for drinks. "So, what now?" Carlos asked. Daniel thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "Now, I live." And for the first time in a long, long time, he felt free.